So imagine you have a brother, right?
Okay, yeah, I'm with you.
You grew up together, you shared a room, and honestly, you know every single one of his annoying habits. Like, you probably openly mock him in front of his friends.
Oh, constantly. I mean, that is basically the job description of a sibling.
Exactly. So what would it actually take for you to not only, like, suddenly call him the Lord of the universe, but to willingly be thrown off the roof of a building for that belief?
Wow. Well, it would take an event that just fundamentally breaks your understanding of reality. I mean, a really good argument wouldn't do it. You would have to see something undeniably miraculous.
Right, something impossible. Well, welcome to Zion Recap. Today we are taking a deep dive into the Easter Sunday message, the one delivered by Pastor Roy at Zion CC on April 5, 2026.
Yeah, the message is titled The Death of Death, a Resurrection Sunday message, and it tackles that exact scenario with the brother.
It really does. So our mission today is to unpack the core historical and personal reasons why the resurrection operates as the absolute anchor of the Christian faith.
Exactly, and to discover how an ancient event from 2 millennia ago intercepts our very modern feelings of, total hopelessness.
Yeah. So to really grasp the magnitude of a resurrection, we first have to deal with the locked room, right?
Right. The disciples were in hiding, they were completely terrified, and to understand the absolute emotional crater they were in, Pastor Roy set up this really intense historical backdrop.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Well, we're talking about 400 years of profound, suffocating darkness before Jesus even stepped onto the scene. God's people literally believed he had stopped speaking to them.
Wait, 400 years. That's roughly the distance between the landing of the Mayflower and today.
Yeah, it's massive.
That means entire generations were born, lived their entire lives, and died under a sky that felt like it was, I don't know, made of solid brass.
That's a great way to put it. The psychological toll of that kind of spiritual isolation must have been just devastating. You're praying, but the cultural assumption is that nobody is listening. God had simply gone silent.
Wow. And you have to layer that spiritual isolation over the brutal physical realities of the first century, right?
Oh, absolutely. Life was relentlessly harsh. Food was scarce, which meant this constant anxiety about survival. Medical care was practically non-existent.
Yeah, lifespans were incredibly short back then.
Right. And on top of that, they are living under severe political oppression, crushing poverty, and what they perceived as literal demonic darkness.
So the baseline human experience wasn't just, life is hard.
Yeah.
It was scraping by in an agonizing, silent dark.
Exactly. And then into that absolute void, Jesus arrives. He is healing the sick. He's feeding thousands of hungry people. He is freeing the oppressed.
400-year silence is finally broken.
Yes. He was visibly and audibly the presence of God returning to a desperate people.
Which sets up the emotional whiplash of Holy Week perfectly. I mean, on Palm Sunday, the crowds are giving Jesus a hero's welcome. They're throwing down branches, calling him the Messiah.
The anticipation was just electric.
Yeah, because after thousands of years of ancestral waiting and those 400 years of dead silence, they genuinely thought the finish line was right there. They thought their ultimate freedom had finally arrived in Jerusalem.
They could taste it. But then, within a matter of days, the completely unimaginable happens.
He's killed.
Yeah. The man they thought was the answer is publicly, violently executed.
The emotional crash of going from the absolute pinnacle of collective hope to the deepest valley of despair is, it's just hard to overstate. Like in Luke chapter 24, the disciples are lamenting, and the phrasing they use is haunting. They say, "We had hoped he would redeem us."
Yeah, the finality of that past tense, had hoped. It's a closed book. Death won.
It makes me think of an analogy. It's like putting your entire life savings, your absolute whole heart and all your emotional energy into a surefire, guaranteed cure for a terminal illness.
Okay, yeah.
You are standing outside the clinic, you know you're about to be healed, and then someone comes out and tells you the only batch of the medicine was just destroyed in a fire. The devastation wouldn't just be about the illness taking its course, right? It would be the sudden, violent theft of hope.
That is so accurate. And that theft of hope maps perfectly onto the human experience today. That past tense hopelessness, that crushing feeling that the darkness has definitively won, is something people carry into their lives every single day.
Yeah, for sure. But how does that actually help you when you wake up to a massive crisis on a Tuesday? I mean, people tune into a deep dive like this carrying deep trauma, agonizing loss, unwanted medical diagnoses, or just completely shattered dreams.
Right, they are sitting in their own version of a locked room.
Exactly, feeling like the light will never come for them. So I get the despair, But how do we get out of that room? How does the sermon pivot from that total crushing defeat to the massive global movement of Easter morning? Because right now, the disciples are just mourning.
Well, the pivot relies entirely on historical evidence. The shift from mourning to an unstoppable movement wasn't based on a new philosophical idea. It was based on a literal event.
An actual historical event.
Yes. Pastor Roy anchors his own personal faith on a very specific piece of historical data found in the Apostle Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 15, verse 3.
Okay, this is an early church creed, right? A statement of belief they would recite out loud.
Exactly. It's one of the earliest recorded summaries of the Christian faith, dating back to within just a few years of the crucifixion.
And the timing there is the critical mechanism, isn't it?
It really is,
Yeah,
because myths and legends take generations to form. You have to wait for the eyewitnesses to die off before you can start exaggerating the story without being corrected.
Right, otherwise someone calls your bluff.
Exactly. But this creed was forming and circulating while the eyewitnesses were still alive and walking around Jerusalem.
So you could literally just walk up to them in the market and be like, hey, is this true? Did you see this?
Precisely. And in this creed, Paul lists the specific people to whom the resurrected Jesus appeared. He mentions Peter, then the 12 disciples, then a crowd of over 500 brothers at once.
500 people at one time.
Yeah, and he explicitly notes that most of those 500 were still alive, essentially daring the skeptics to go fact-check his claim.
Go ask them yourselves.
Right. But there is one specific name in the middle of that list that Pastor Roy highlights as the definitive anchor. The creed says, "Then he appeared to James."
James, Jesus' brother. Okay, here's where we get back to that sibling dynamic from the beginning of the deep dive.
It's so fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
Because if we look at the Gospel of John, specifically chapter 7, it is not a pretty picture. James and his brothers did not believe in Jesus. In fact, they actively mocked him.
Yeah, they told him, dripping with sarcasm, to go down to Judea to show off his miracles to the world.
And the context there is crucial. They knew the authorities in Judea wanted to kill Jesus. They were essentially taunting him to walk into a death trap.
Which is brutal.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I have to push back playfully on anyone who thinks a brother would easily become a devoted follower just out of family loyalty. Because if anyone knows your flaws, your annoying habits, and your absolute worst moments, it's your brother.
Oh, without a doubt.
A sibling will go out of their way to humble you. So for a brother who openly mocked you and told you to go get yourself killed, to suddenly turn around and willingly go to a violent death, declaring that you are the resurrected Lord, that is uniquely compelling evidence.
It really is perhaps the most psychologically profound piece of evidence we have.
Yeah.
The historical transformation of James is just staggering.
What happens to him?
He goes from a sarcastic skeptic to becoming the lead pastor and central pillar of the early church in Jerusalem. And the ultimate proof of his conviction is recorded by the first-century historian Josephus.
Okay, what does Josephus say?
He documents that James was ultimately targeted for his unwavering declaration that Jesus was the Christ. They literally took James to the pinnacle of the temple and threw him off.
Which is just a horrific, brutal way to execute someone.
It is. But the historical account notes that James actually survived the initial fall. He managed to get up onto his knees, and in his final moments before they beat him to death, he prayed for the forgiveness of the very men attacking him.
Let's just pause on the gravity of that for a second. The man who once tried to send his brother into a death trap in Judea is now willingly going to his own violent death, praying for his killers, all because he is absolutely convinced his sibling conquered the grave.
It's undeniable conviction.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a moment. Could it just be like a mass hallucination? Could James and the disciples have just been so grief-stricken that their brains invented a resurrection to cope?
It's a common theory, but psychologically and scientifically, hallucinations are individual experiences, much like dreams. 500 people do not share the exact same dream at the exact same time.
Right. It doesn't work like that.
Furthermore, a grief-induced hallucination might provide momentary comfort, but it does not give a skeptic the absolute fortitude to be thrown off a temple years later.
That's a great point.
You also have to look at Paul, a guy who made his living hunting down and violently persecuting Christians. He had no grief for Jesus. He hated him. Yet, after encountering the resurrected Jesus on the road, he completely flips and becomes the greatest missionary the church has ever known.
So the only logical mechanism that accounts for that level of radical change across skeptics, enemies, and crowds of 500 people is that they actually saw him alive.
Exactly. The resurrection wasn't a slow-burning myth. It was an explosive event that violently altered the trajectories of real people in real time.
Yeah. If James was willing to be thrown off a temple for this belief, he clearly thought death was already defeated. But I have to ask, how does James's lack of fear translate to the listener's life today?
Well, it translates through the concept Pastor Roy used as the title of his message, the death of death.
The death of death.
Yeah. By resurrecting, Jesus didn't just survive death, he enacted the death of death itself.
I love that phrase so much. It makes me think of like a canceled debt, you know?
How do you mean?
So if you owe $1 million to a bank and someone pays it off, that is incredible. Your debt is gone. But the death of death is like someone paying off your debt and then completely dismantling the bank brick by brick so they can never issue a loan or collect a penalty ever again.
Oh, that's good.
Right. Death lost its ultimate authority.
It really did. And when that bank is dismantled, the intimidation factor disappears entirely. So when death comes knocking with a collection notice, like a sickness, a failure, or a physical end, you realize it is a forged document. They don't own your debt anymore.
That is powerful.
And Pastor Roy highlights two specific rock-solid promises that flow from this reality, found in the words of Jesus in John chapter 5, verse 24.
Okay, let's get into those. Because, I mean, I get the historical proof, but I'm struggling with the application of that first promise. If death's power is broken and the bank is dismantled, why are we still getting these terrible medical diagnoses? Why do our bodies still break down? It doesn't always feel like death is dead, you know?
Yep. Yeah, that is the tension of the first promise. The promise isn't that physical death vanishes immediately, but that its power has been fundamentally demoted.
Demoted, okay.
Right. It only has jurisdiction over the physical body now. It cannot touch your spirit, your true self, or your eternity. Your eternity is entirely secure in Christ.
I see.
And actually, Pastor Roy brought a little humor to this part. He noted that since he just turned 40, he is perfectly fine with getting a new, upgraded physical body eventually.
Honestly, that is very relatable.
Yeah.
As you get older, a new body sounds pretty great.
Right. But the point is, the physical breakdown of our bodies is no longer the tragic, ultimate end of the story. It is merely a transition.
Right.
If you receive a terrible medical diagnosis, it is absolutely still a tragedy in the physical realm. The grief is deeply real, but the resurrection guarantees that the diagnosis does not have the final word over your existence.
So the worst thing that can happen to you physically is no longer the ultimate thing that can happen to you. Your core identity is untouchable. That drastically reframes how we handle the darkness and those diagnoses we talked about at the start of the sermon.
It changes everything.
And what is the second promise in John 5:24?
The second promise is complete, absolute cleanliness and freedom. If you come to Christ, he declares you clean, period.
No asterisks, no hidden clauses where you have to earn it back.
None. Because of the resurrection, we have proof that God fully accepted Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. The check cleared, so to speak. Therefore, there is absolutely no condemnation for those who are in Christ.
Man, that completely flips the script on how religion usually operates. I mean, usually the mechanism is clean yourself up, behave perfectly, and then maybe God will accept you.
Exactly. But Pastor Roy's closing invitation to the church was the exact opposite of that. It was a call for radical honesty.
Tell me about that.
The invitation was remarkably transparent. He explicitly said that if anyone walked in feeling guilty, carrying the heavy weight of shame, or just feeling a million miles away from God, they didn't need to hide it behind a religious mask.
Yeah, no faking it.
Right. They were invited to simply raise their hand, confess that need, and be completely transformed and freed by the resurrected God.
The emotional release of that must be staggering. To walk into a room carrying decades of shame, and to be told that the debt isn't just paid, but the bank of condemnation is destroyed.
It's beautiful.
No judgment from the church, because there is no condemnation from God. If he calls you clean, you are clean. If he sets you free, you are genuinely free.
Yeah, the ground at the foot of the cross and at the entrance to the empty tomb is completely level. Everyone needs the same grace.
As we look at all of this, the resurrection isn't just a theological concept or a, dusty historical footnote. It is the anchor that holds when the storms of life hit.
Absolutely.
It's rooted in real history,
Yeah.
in the blood and testimony of former skeptics like James and Paul. And it offers real, tangible promises of freedom and eternal security right now.
I think the most important question we can leave you with to mull over is this. If the undeniable reality of the resurrection could take a sarcastic, unbelieving brother like James and transform him into a forgiving, bold martyr, what dormant, seemingly dead areas of your own life might just be waiting for a resurrection moment?
Oh, wow.
Where are you assuming the darkness has won when the light is just waiting to break through?
What a profound thought to take into your week. Really think about that. And if you want to experience the full impact of this message, and I highly recommend you do, you can hear the full original sermon by visiting Zion CC's YouTube page.
Yeah, definitely go watch it.
Just search for the video titled The Death of Death, a Resurrection Sunday Message.
Experiencing the message directly and alongside a community makes all the difference in the world.
It absolutely does. And
Yeah.
listen, if you ever need clarification on anything we discussed today, if you want to dive deeper into this specific sermon, or if you just have questions about life, faith, or the historical evidence we walked through, you are warmly invited to attend small group on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m.
Yes, please come.
We would absolutely love to talk with you in person and walk through these questions together.
It is a phenomenal space for honest conversation and asking the really hard questions.
And to catch the very latest sermon, make sure to join Zion CC this coming Sunday at either 9:00 a.m. or 11:00 a.m.
We look forward to seeing you there.
Before we go, we want to remind you that Zion uses AI tools to help summarize information, sermons, and common questions to produce content like this recap.
Right.
While we work very hard to keep everything accurate and true to the source material, AI can sometimes make mistakes or hallucinate details, so always refer back to the original sermon for the final word.
Thank you so much for exploring the history and the promises of Easter with us.
Thank you so much for joining us for Zion Recap. Remember, even when the storm is raging and the night feels endlessly long, the anchor holds. We will catch you on the next deep dive.